Did you know you can legally burn the American flag as a form of protest, yet you can't yell fire in a crowded theater? The First Amendment might be the most misunderstood right in America. Today, we're breaking down what it actually protects and what it absolutely doesn't. When the founders wrote, "Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech," they created something revolutionary. Even today, America's speech protections remain broader than almost any other nation, but they're not unlimited. First key point: the First Amendment only restricts the government, not private companies or individuals. That's why Twitter, Facebook, or your workplace can restrict your speech. They're not the government, so different rules apply. But what about when the government can limit your speech? Courts use a balancing test weighing free expression against other vital interests. True threats aren't protected. You can't legally threaten to harm someone and claim free speech as your defense. Revealing classified information? Not protected. Just ask Edward Snowden why he can't safely return to the United States. Copyright infringement isn't protected either. You can't claim free speech while stealing someone else's creative work. The law draws clear lines here. And that famous example about shouting fire in a crowded theater? It's about speech that creates imminent, likely danger to others. But here's where it gets interesting. Did you know hate speech is actually protected in America? Unlike many European countries and Canada, the U.S. doesn't ban hate speech unless it directly incites imminent lawless action or constitutes a true threat. The Supreme Court has repeatedly ruled that the government cannot punish speech simply because it's offensive, hurtful, or promotes hateful ideologies. The distinction is crucial. America's system protects the right to offend, but draws the line at direct, specific harm or imminent danger. That's why flag burning is protected. It's offensive to many, but doesn't directly harm anyone or create immediate danger. So what can you safely say? Political speech receives the highest protection. You can criticize any politician, including the president, without legal consequences. You can advocate for changing laws, protest peacefully, and express controversial opinions about religion, politics, or social issues without government punishment. Religious speech, artistic expression, and academic inquiry all receive strong protection, even when the content is controversial. The press can publish unflattering truths about powerful people without fear of government censorship, a vital check on power. But wait, if hate speech is protected, why do people get fired for offensive comments? Remember our first point. The First Amendment only restricts government action. Your employer, as a private entity, can set its own speech rules. Similarly, social media platforms can remove content or ban users based on their own policies. They're private companies, not government entities. Free speech protects you from government punishment, not from social consequences, criticism from others, or private sector policies. The boundaries of free speech have evolved through hundreds of Supreme Court cases, each refining our understanding of this fundamental right. In 1969, Brandenburg v. Ohio established that even advocating violence is protected unless it's intended and likely to incite imminent lawless action. Tinker v. Des Moines protected students wearing black armbands to protest the Vietnam War, establishing that students don't shed their rights at the schoolhouse gate. But in today's digital age, new questions arise. Does the government have greater power to monitor your online speech for national security? How should we handle AI-generated speech? What about deepfakes that make it appear someone said something they never did? The law is still catching up. Let's compare. In Germany, displaying Nazi symbols is illegal. In Thailand, criticizing the monarchy can mean prison. The United Kingdom has stricter libel laws, making it easier to sue for damaging false statements than in the United States. Canada prohibits hate propaganda against identifiable groups, a restriction that would likely be unconstitutional under U.S. free speech doctrine. Is the American approach better? It depends on what you value more: maximum freedom of expression or protection from harmful speech. There's no perfect answer. Some argue America's approach allows harmful ideologies to spread. Others say restricting speech is a slippery slope that inevitably leads to suppressing legitimate dissent. The trade-off is clear. America accepts more offensive speech to ensure robust protection for political dissent and minority viewpoints. Historically, free speech protections have expanded over time. Speech that once could be punished, like criticizing the draft or advocating unpopular political views, is now protected. But the internet has complicated things. When you post online, your speech can instantly reach millions worldwide, amplifying both its benefits and potential harms. Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act shields online platforms from liability for user content, fundamentally shaping our online speech landscape. Without this protection, platforms would likely censor far more content to avoid lawsuits, potentially silencing many legitimate voices in the process. Here's something crucial. Free speech isn't just about what the government allows. It's also about whether people feel free to express themselves without fear. Social pressure and cancel culture can create a chilling effect where legal speech goes unsaid because people fear social or professional consequences. The solution isn't necessarily legal, but cultural, creating spaces where diverse viewpoints can be expressed and debated respectfully, even when we strongly disagree. True free speech culture requires not just the right to speak, but the willingness to listen, especially to ideas we find challenging. It also requires distinguishing between facts, which can be true or false, and opinions or values, which can differ without either person being wrong. And it demands media literacy, the ability to critically evaluate information sources and recognize misinformation, propaganda, and manipulation tactics. So where does this leave you personally? With tremendous freedom and responsibility. Your speech rights in America are expansive but not unlimited. You're free to express almost any opinion, but wise speakers consider not just what they can say, but what they should say and how it affects others. The most valuable use of free speech? Speaking truth to power, advocating for the marginalized, and contributing meaningfully to public discourse. Throughout history, courageous speakers have used this right to advance civil rights, expose corruption, and challenge unjust systems when doing so was difficult. The true power of free speech isn't just in what we say, but in the exchange of ideas that follows, the conversation that moves society forward. And here's the big reveal. Free speech isn't valuable just because it's a right, but because it's how we collectively solve problems and discover truth. In the marketplace of ideas, better arguments and more accurate information should ultimately prevail over falsehoods and weak reasoning, at least in theory. What do you think? Is America's approach to free speech too permissive or not protective enough? Share your thoughts below and check out our video on privacy rights next.